I've got a real treat for you today. In this video, you're going to learn the techniques behind the best infomercial makers in the world. Ron Lynch is the guru. He was the marketing mastermind, the genius behind GoPro. In this video, you're going to learn a shit ton. Hey everybody, and welcome back to 10-Minute Hacks from the Best Marketing Minds. I'm blown away by my guest today. Ron Lynch is in the house. He is the creator of the Big Baby Agency. He is one of the marketing strategists behind the launch of GoPro. He's just an overall badass dude. And hey, what's up? What's up, Ron? How are you?
Yeah, that's a nice intro. Thank you. Dude, let's call my folks. I want my mom to hear that I'm a badass dude. He's a righteous dude.
Well, and that was the most important part of it, right? It wasn't the GoPro or any of that. It was just the being a badass dude.
That's nice.
Yeah. So let's dive right in, Ron. A lot of marketers, entrepreneurs have a hard luck story, something that pushes them for greatness. What's yours?
So I tell people I'm a failed child actor. I was very lucky at the age of 19. I got a prominent role in a movie Robert Altman directed for television, got a SAG card, and then I successfully became a failed child actor. I did about a dozen movies in the Seattle area, and I learned how to make films, and I kept my day job, which was working in the grocery stores. I went to college, and I kind of got sucked into that as a career because the choice was going to Hollywood or staying in Seattle and marrying my wife, and that seemed like a much smarter thing to do, especially one of the last films I made, River Phoenix was in, and I unfortunately was all too familiar with his lifestyle and his passing, and I was like, yeah, that's not for me, man. And so I got into business, and I ended up being an operations director in the grocery retail space, which is a very competitive game of narrow margins, real estate, labor, perishables. And I learned how to sell individually to human beings inside the setting of a store through demonstration and pitch. We brought that concept kind of the fair pitch inside the grocery store to move our markets into more upscale products and convert stores from low-scale stores into high-scale kind of Whole Foods style stores based on the idea of demoing.
Wow.
And I lost a job in that industry. That's one of the things about that industry is if you're successful at doing turnarounds for people, you can accept it. You better be used to getting fired about once a year because you go into a business, you turn it around and they can you. So
right.
One of those cycles, and I had a friend who was he had an ad agency, was launching the George Foreman Grill, and he was using space in my grocery store. I had been writing screenplays at the time. I sold a screenplay to Sam Perlmutter, who was the agent for George Foreman, and this guy found out about it and said, could you write a direct response TV commercial? And I said, sure.
And the rest is history, huh?
Yeah, so I wrote a commercial for Space Bags, and it did well. Then I started writing and directing. I quit, that industry, the grocery industry, and I was now in the filmmaking for sales business, infomercial business, short form and long form, and I've been doing that ever since, 20 years now.
Wow, that's freaking fascinating. So first of all, congratulations on being a failed successful child actor. That was probably your first smart move. But what you parlayed your experience into is just incredible. That's really amazing. What was the, for you, once you started, because it doesn't really, it sounds to me like you've done an extraordinary amount of business online, but what was the first thing? Was it Space Bags? What was the first thing that you broke into that actually made some money?
There was a couple of things. Space Bags make money for Space Bags, but it was probably the smaller entrepreneurial clients. I did a show called The Ultimate Chopper with Chef Tony that sold like $80 million worth of food processors, and that was the precursor to the Magic Bullet. And then at the same time, I did a show with Kevin Harrington, who is kind of famous for being one of the Shark Tank guys. The first couple of seasons he was on Shark Tank. And we did a product called the Flavor Wave Deluxe Oven, which was on TV for 10 years. And I think that's one of the unusual things for my shows. I've had a lot of shows that have been on 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, which is an awfully long run for an infomercial. So my early hits were kind of in the cooking space, which related back to my grocery space, really.
Right, right, right. So what would you say for somebody, in that space now who's trying to generate leads and traffic online? What would you tell them to do?
Well, I tell them, I actually do that now. And there's so many television networks, and it's so expensive to do an infomercial and buy media and test into success like we did 20 years ago. We actually do it the opposite now. If I have a product that either a client brings me or I'm investing in, generally, I will go onto Facebook and generate videos that test traffic. I'll use the things that I'm learning about, message bots and how to correctly get yourself to the top of Amazon and use them as your fulfillment warehouse. And there's some things we have our own fulfillment warehouses for, and some things we use Amazon for, and how and when to blend those techniques. But there is absolutely nobody who can't succeed at doing exactly what I do the way I'm exactly doing it now, which is tell a good story to the consumer about them with empathy and only sell good products. If you can just do a couple of simple things, you'll win. But it's actually quite simple to do nowadays.
Right. And I love that you kind of broke it down in a formula, right? So could you repeat that one more time?
Sure, I'll break it down a little bit tighter formula. One, pick a product that has innovation. So a good quality product. The product must have an audience or audiences. Those become your consumer funnels and your messaging techniques to those consumers. The third thing is it's got to have margin, because if you don't have margin, you can't buy the media and deliver the product. So you have to have high margin in your product. And the fourth thing is you have to have story. And that's what you add to your product is story, is you take your product and you back build from the individual audiences and tell them a very personal story about them and their need, and develop the concept of need and desire, then solve that immediately with the innovation of your product and its story and its benefits that are supported by its features, and then couch it with a great offer.
I really appreciate you defining that. I think one of the greatest challenges to new entrepreneurs or new marketers is to stop making it about themselves, and to get into the conversation that's already happening in the consumer's mind.
Yes, and so what we see is in some of what I would consider to be our more, how do I say this, more strategic marketing efforts. Sometimes we're not even advertising the marketing in the first thing that we reach out with. Is we may be just discussing a topic and leaving the breadcrumbs for the audience to come find us where they feel like they've discovered us instead of us being jammed down their throat. So we may put out 5 or 6 or 7 pieces of content that lead to more content that eventually bring them into an actual physical product. And by the way, I primarily sell physical products. I don't do a lot of informational products.
Got it. Nice. What would you recommend to an entrepreneur who's just getting started today and they want to get into the space you're in? Where do they start? So forget that. If you lost everything, if you lost it all, you had no network, no email address, no emails, no nothing, and you wanted to get back into the space, what are you going to do?
Oh, it's funny because there's categories I go into where that's my exact situation. I wake up that way about 4 times 4 projects a year. I'm starting from zero because I don't have an audience that overlaps into a project. So the first thing I do that most people are just too lazy to do is I do a creative brief for every product I do. And my creative briefs tend to be 15 to 20 pages long. They're strategic and they spell out exactly what needs to happen in the business. So they spell out the USP of the product, the innovation. They explain what the margin is. I create offers. I look at what the audiences are. What's the global message of the brand, and what are the specific stories that need to be told to each audience. So I do the homework. I think that's an easy step for most people to skip, even corporations. And you mentioned, hey, for a new entrepreneur that has an item that they bring forward, the first mistake that they make is they generally talk about the features of their own product and why they start pitching it really hard. Corporations are exactly the same way. That's why I have clients, is they come to me and they approach it the way a newbie does. Like, it's just, it always defies me, but it happens time and time again. So you always need to start with the audience and go, Is there an audience? Do I have a true innovation that helps them? Does it have margin? And so you always are building backwards.
I love that. And that's a great
people that are doing it well, and watch how good people are doing it. Well, if you see an advertisement that is on Facebook or online that you're attracted to, start breaking it down. Go watch go to Kickstarter, watch the top 10 Kickstarter videos, because those are usually pretty good pitches. They're long as heck, but they're good sales videos. And they all have the same hallmarks. They start out with a problem. They talk about innovation. They introduce you to the founder. So you can have somebody behind the company you like. Then they show you how the product is made. They give you some how-to, so you start to have a reason to believe that you are part of that tribe and you want to participate.
Okay, I'm going to just drop the mic and we're done.
We said you only had 10 minutes. I was trying to jam. In the grocery business, we used to call that jamming 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. That's what I tried to do for you.
You hinted on this a moment ago. I heard you earlier. You called yourself an old guy, but an old guy is getting into bots. I like this. What else are you studying in 2017, 2018, and beyond?
I think that the aggregate media pattern that you can get from people. Cambridge Analytica is an interesting company who's out there, and they did a lot of business in the last couple of years by doing surveys and getting access to people's Facebook likes and discovering what those people needed or liked based on their likes. And so probably pre-targeting, as there's so much media out there and places people get information, I'm constantly looking and studying new tactics to get the audience to voluntarily, kindly tell you about themselves so you can serve them better. And I think that some of the things that I expect to see change in the next couple of years, I feel really strong. I was a retailer, so I felt really great when Blockbuster died because I predicted that 20 years before it happened. And now people say, oh, that was an easy thing to see. It really wasn't. In 1980, that would not have been an easy thing to see, but it was very easy for us to see as retailers. So now I look at, and I see that the idea of cable and internet going away, being one company, but at the same time being very self-selected, where I think that you'll go to your internet provider or your cable provider and say, I don't want 400 channels. I want these 40, because that's what I can pay attention to. And I get rid of all that other shit out of the way. Just give me the 40 that I want. I'll pay a premium for that. And while I'm at it, let me fill out this self-selected form. These are the kinds of commercials I want to see. And I think you'll see self-selected commercials both in television and on the internet. You already get some of that by what you peruse on the internet, but I think it'll become a much more pointed pull model for content, media, and advertising than it is. And people will pay a premium to be part of that pull model.
I've been saying that for years. Why can I not fucking pick my own cable channels, right? Now, what you just said, the idea of self-selecting advertising, I had never thought of. That's genius.
Well, it's funny. A lot of the things, if you live long enough, you get to see things happen again. And really what we're talking about is the magazine model. You think about it, years ago, when you go to the magazine rack, there was 5 zillion magazines, one for everybody with every interest in the world, which was the first form of the internet. It was just paper. And you would pick the magazine that you liked and you open it up, and guess what? There's ads that are germane to people that like that type of category of magazine. And I think that model is every day it's playing out more and more online.
Right. And I mean, it happens, online it happens a lot because of algorithms and understanding your interests and likes. And it happens-ish on television, but you see so many, it's so broad on television, right? Like I could be anybody and getting these ads, and they just don't make any sense for me as an individual.
What's interesting though, because every time that the ad model changes on TV, it gets more expensive for advertisers. Because, we buy a lot of media, so I can say that I expect that'll be even more expensive for the advertiser because it's a higher qualified lead. Right. I think they'll get better results. I think they'll pay more for it.
Yeah, and I'm a Facebook marketer. Like when I pay online, I don't want the cheapest click. I want the right click at the right price to buy the right product.
I just want to talk to my customers that don't know about me.
Right.
They just don't know they're my customers yet.
Right. They will soon. Oh, yes. What marketer inspired you the most coming up? Who is your inspiration?
Um, let's see. It's easy to kind of say that in retrospect because I know a lot more about advertising now than I did the day I started. I didn't know. Man, I fell out of the back of a truck doing advertising, and I just landed in. My dad says often, "Man, you go from thing to one thing, you just fall backwards into gold, dude." And I feel fortunate. I think I'm just fast at figuring stuff out in a new environment as a matter of survival. But I think now I look back at the Gary Halbert. I look back at David Ogilvy. David Ogilvy has this great 20-minute piece that everybody should watch online about how direct response marketers are the only ones that know what they're doing. So I think Ogilvy was an absolute master. And then I look at just good writers. What's good writing and good storytelling?
That's awesome. And I think that's something so important for marketers to understand these days is it's about content, right? Content drives people to you draw people in, right? And I think we get so caught up in needing to sell that we just shoot ourselves in the foot constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're talking to the audience about the audience, you're going to be fine. You got to be empathetic enough to discover who that audience is and have a very specific entry point of conversation with them. The days of writing one ad for the entirety of your customer base are long over.
Right.
If you have a customer base that has 15 different verticals, great. You got to see that as an opportunity to have 15 very different conversations that feel very personal to that viewer, because that's what sucks them in.
Right. You've given us just a tremendous amount of nuggets here. What's the number one marketing hack that you use to defeat all others? What's the thing that you just couldn't live without, or that just you like, this is golden?
Finding out what the right entry question is. It's the right pickup line, right? As marketers, we're in a gigantic marketplace in a gigantic bar trying to pick up customers. And what's the opener that one gets their attention, but also makes their head twist to the side and says, "Tell me more." If you engineer the correct conversation line by line, and you start with the right question at the very beginning, becomes a Pythagorean chain reaction. And I do that when I go to pitch a client. When I go to pitch a client, I have my deck prepared a week ahead of time, and then I spend my head on my pillow time every night walking through the precise language that I'm going to use throughout the entire presentation. And I rehearse it like Kevin Spacey to the point that when I get up and perform it, it doesn't feel performed or rehearsed whatsoever, but I have control of exactly the intonation of every single word. And that's one of the reasons we named the agency Big Baby, is we often went across from really huge global agencies like Mother, and we would beat them in sales pitches. And so we became the Big Baby.
Damn. That's amazing. Ron, you're a tremendous brain and a really fun guy to spend time with. Thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right. Thanks a lot.
You got it.